And we're live. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. You guys, I am so excited today. We are going to be talking about the power of a success story with my dear friend, Rachel Warnock. So, last week, if you tuned in, Amy Posick and I talked about why you need to talk about yourself online, how it is boasting and not bragging. And she really helped us learn why it's important as a personal brand, a professional brand, and how to get that courage and why it's so important and why it's not as big of a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. So today we are going to talk with Rachel about how to put all that into action. We're going to talk about the power of a success story. So Rachel, give us your intro. Tell us who you are, what you do, and why the power of a success story called to you.
Okay, well, like you, Lauren, I am a professional marketer in the healthcare space. I'm the director of marketing at J2 Interactive, but I also have my own business as an herbalist, as an entrepreneur there. So I'm the founder and lead herbalist at Impact Botanicals, which is a botanical body care line. So I tell success stories in my own business. I tell success stories for a living. It's a huge part of my day-to-day in my life, and so I get to witness the power and the impact of those success stories on customers, on prospects, on people in everyday conversations. And it's one of those things that really shifts the needle. And it makes you love your job. It really does. When you
I
get
love
to
that.
share those things, right? So that's why I am so in love with the idea of a success story. I spend my days telling them, and I'm so happy to it sounds very simple, right? The power of a success story. But
Right.
we're going to get into it, and I promise it's going to be really interesting for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason I thought of Rachel for this particular topic, and I, kind of was spitballing with her with some of the ideas that I was thinking, is because we at LPC had just finished writing a success story about Impact Botanicals. So it was actually funny when it came to mind, Rachel was actually the subject of the success story. So my writer, Abby Thompson, shout out Abby, wrote a beautiful success story for our dear friend Laura Macaron, who is the owner of Risby Design. And I'm super excited because you will see her in a future LinkedIn Live. But so Laura did this beautiful redo for Rachel with all of her packaging, her logo, the whole kit and caboodle. And Abby interviewed Rachel and really began to tell this success story that Rachel has had ever since using the new packaging from Laura. And we're excited because we're going to come back to Rachel in 6 months when she has some more sales details and we can even share some figures and whatnot. But so that's initially what made me think. I was like, oh, wow, that was a really cool way to talk about a success story. And then it tripped me to remember that Rachel also is a marketer when she's not an herbalist. And she and I went to her company website and they had a ton of success stories and blogs on their website. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect marriage of all the ways that you can tell a success story. So tell us from your position at J2, tell us a little bit about what you do for the healthcare industry and how you put together a success story for that. Because I think when people think of success story, the way we did it for you with Risby might be what comes to mind is
Right.
that kind of very tangible. Here's the before, here's the after, here's, what Rachel is saying. But when you have a service or a technology that's not tangible, that you can't show a picture, how do you create those success stories? Tell
Yeah.
us.
No, that's a great question. So, J2 Interactive is a trusted name in healthcare. We've been around for over 20 years, and we're a professional services company. So, when large hospitals and healthcare organizations purchase a new technology, they often have to implement it. That means they have to build the architecture out themselves. They have to learn how to use it. Some of these technologies are written in really unique coding languages that their internal resources might not know, and their internal resources might not specialize in all the nuances of integration, of HIPAA, of of healthcare, there are so many different healthcare languages, right? And making sure that different terminologies line up from, Dr. A uses this verbiage, Dr. B uses
Yeah,
that verbiage. Um, when doctors get married, maybe change their names, like all of these little things can create discrepancies in data. And we are
so interesting.
very good at working across multiple technologies, whether it's AWS, Microsoft Azure, InterSystems, Salesforce, MuleSoft, and Rhapsody. We have some insanely talented developers, each experts in healthcare, that can go in, and so these large healthcare organizations, HIEs, payers, providers, laboratories, they rely on J2 resources to come in and build those architectures for them, teach them in some cases how to use the
I love this.
technology, right? And so without taxing their own internal resources. And so that's what J2 does in healthcare. And when we tell a success story, we're really telling the success of our clients, right? So we're bragging about them, right? What were they able to do with this technology implementation? And so we're tying together multiple parties. We're tying together the customer, we're tying together the technology provider, whether that's InterSystems, whether that's Salesforce, whoever it might be, and then also, what we did as part of that. And one of the things that I love about J2 as a company is we're always really hyper focused on the people outcome. What was the actual healthcare outcome? And a good success story should always have numbers, right? I mean, that is at the bottom line what really moves decision makers. It gets the signature on the dotted line. And so when we're able to say, like, this technology implementation increased prescription refills by 9 times, right? It
That's huge.
increased pharmacy revenue by $2 million, right? Those are important facts and figures to include in the success story. But what we also include is the human outcome of that.
Exactly.
And these are things that are not always as measurable, they're not always as tangible, but, in my role at J2, we always really focus on what was the human impact. And so that might be a little bit of a looser, more nebulous statement, but it's something to the effect of that increased, patient satisfaction scores, right? And
Yeah.
we might not be able to give as firm of a number there. It might be a little bit more nebulous, but we tell the story of an actual person. Like this made my stay at the hospital so much easier, made it easier for me to go home. Like the system was so much smoother. And so maybe that satisfaction score goes from like a 3 to a 5, right? But en masse. And so we are always looking for the human side of what did that technology do for a person, what did that technology do for a community, and that is a reflection of our value as a company and how we tell that story. But it's also ultimately at the end of the day what healthcare is all about, right? It's the human impact. And so, yes, we do the numbers. Yes, we have the business side of it. But at the center of that story is always how did it help the individual?
Absolutely. And so, what would you say to somebody that has a business that doesn't feel like they have that, as powerful as a story as somebody like you or I working in healthcare?
Sure. We all start small. We all start small. And so I can speak to this as an entrepreneur, right? So we don't always have those big flashy stories, but just and when I was first starting out as an herbalist, when I was first starting with my product line, getting a friend to just say, "Oh my God, my skin is so much more moisturized.
Yeah.
I'm not itchy anymore." Like that little win, right? Like it can be a success story can be as short as one sentence. Let's be honest.
Hmm.
It really can. A success story can be as simple as this person, this product, this service made my day, right? Like
Exactly.
that is a success story, right? That we might call that a testimonial in that case, right? Because just the jargon and the verbiage of marketing, but at the end of the day, a testimonial is a version of a success story.
It
And
definitely is.
so don't be afraid to grasp the low-hanging fruit. Don't be afraid to grab the sound bite. Those are still success stories.
Absolutely. And how do you like, collect these stories? Sometimes we have like a folder that says, awesome things that people said to LBC that we do. Or sometimes you fill out a survey once you're done with their service.
Yeah.
How does J2 collect those success stories? Because I imagine that that's probably one thing that trips people up is like,
Yeah.
oh, I feel weird asking. You
Yeah.
know,
So yeah, and so a lot of times it's somebody internal to J2 that lets me know, hey, the customer's really happy. We did this great thing. You know, can we get marketing involved? Can we tell the story? And I'm like, ooh, yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so then they're making an introduction and I'm meeting the customer at that point in time.
Oh,
And
okay. That's awesome.
and so I'm going in and I'm like, hey, I would love to tell your story. I heard that, we did some incredible things together. Tell me tell me what happened, and I basically interview them. I coach them through, I ask them a series of questions. A lot of times I'm aligning with the account manager beforehand, like coming up with the questions, making sure that they're relevant, like what should we really focus on, making sure that I get the technology parts right, because that is not my forte. and and I'm always in that process learning like, oh wow, okay, so that's a healthcare coding language. Great, cool. I feel enriched knowing that now. Thank you for that background. And so then I'm going and interviewing these people. I'm interviewing the customer. And then I go and I write the story. And
Yeah.
I tell the story of this was what the challenge was. This is how we tackled it. Was there a consulting element? Did J2 come in and give consultation where the customer was saying, I have this dream, I have this vision, I have no idea how to make it a reality. Because that's another thing that J2 will do. We come in and since we know the vastness of the technology and what is actually possible, sometimes customers, they're like, I want to make this real. I don't know what the best technology out there to do that is. And we can come in and consult, right? So was there consultation involved? Then, when did the data architects get involved? How big was the project? Like, was it a year? Did we get it condensed down into 6 months through, was there a massive timeline? There was one story where we were working on a very tight timeline, and J2 actually developed a tool to help us ingest data and kind of review it in the process of the ingestion to make sure that the data that was being moved was still relevant, still what we wanted in the new environment, and that it was accurate, right? So we built a tool to systematize this to make sure that the customer met their timeline. And it allowed us actually to come in on the project under budget. If
Oh
we had,
my gosh.
I know,
That's
right?
great. That never happens in healthcare. If you guys know anything about healthcare, it's either on time and never on budget. So,
But that's one of the things that's like that's unique to J2, right? Like we get it done. And sometimes that means that we're developing a tool to help us in that process so that we can meet the customer's expectations, so that we make sure that they get to the finish line when, where, and how they want, right? And so that's the story that I'll end up telling. And then it goes through a review process. We bring in the technology providers. They might have a few statements to go in there. We try and get quotes because that's always very powerful. And so it's this writing review and approval process can take a while sometimes. Sometimes we go back and we make edits, but at the end of the day, then it goes out into the world. And so that's the creation process. And then we have
I love that.
the deployment process where we are posting on social media. We're getting individuals involved because when an individual posts on social media, the reach is so much greater than a
Absolutely. Yeah.
page, right? Um, and sometimes they'll even be pitching involved to the media, like or placements in a blog, right? We have
Yeah.
different healthcare influencers, we have different healthcare thought leaders. Can we get the success story placed in a blog, right?
I
Can we
love
get
that.
it somewhere? So once the story is done, what's the reach on it? How far can this go? And that's what we're doing with our success stories, and that's what moves people, right? It's not, I think a success story is what differentiates you from the noise, because it highlights your values, like how you tell the story demonstrates like what you focus on is what's important to you as a company, right? And also there are so many so many companies out there. The competition is fierce, and everybody says things like, "We care about our customers."
Of
Um,
course.
we put people first. All of people say those things, and it's when 50 people are saying that same thing, it starts to sound like marketing jargon, right?
Exactly.
And the way you cut through that marketing noise is we care about people versus we developed a tool for your specific project that allowed you to get the project done on time and under budget.
And that's the difference, you guys. I think that's important to remember is that when we, and I'm going to use your words, when we are showing, not telling, the impact, that's the difference, because
Yes.
anybody can say we do a great job.
Right.
But when you show exactly how you did a great job, that's really important. That's, what moves the needle. So tell
Yeah.
me, before I even really knew you, Rachel, on your LinkedIn header, you had a marketer helping people show, not tell their story. And I love that. That's such a marketer thing to say.
It is.
So tell us, how have you been doing this, showing, not telling, throughout your career, and kind of, what made you put that there? Because as you guys know,
Yeah.
I'm all about the headline on LinkedIn, 220 characters.
Yeah.
Use it for all you have. So why is that so important to you as a marketer?
Because I genuinely think that's how you stand out. I think that that is the most powerful differentiator that we have in a highly competitive market. I think that there are a lot of companies out there that um, they tell, and they get into this thing. It's the presenter's dilemma. Where are you familiar with that term, Lauren? The
No, I am not. Okay,
Okay, well,
so
this is
I
something
can
I learned.
imagine our audience is probably not either. So
Yeah,
let's get
no,
educated, friends.
it's something that I learned recently. The presenter's dilemma is when the presenter is a subject matter expert and they fail to meet the audience where the audience is, which means that they
Ooh.
either over explain, like they go way too deep into the technical, and the audience is just like, right?
Spoiler alert, that happens a lot in our industry. A
Yes, it
lot.
does.
Yes.
Or they assume that the audience already has a base knowledge that the audience does not actually have, right? So
Interesting.
right. So and this happens also very much because we are ingrained in this. This is our everyday, this is our bread and butter. And like I have to remind people, not everybody knows what an HIE is, a health
Right.
information exchange, right? And there's alphabet soup, there's things that just comes out of our mouths naturally when you're in it the day to day, but you're like, wait a minute, does the audience know this, right? And so the presenter's dilemma is when you just fail to meet them where they are.
That's
And
fascinating.
it is, right? And so part of our jobs as marketers, I think, and is to make sure that we're very aware of that and to always be asking ourselves, like, who is the audience? What is their awareness? Where is that audience in their journey? So that we're tailoring our words and our conversation with them to meet them exactly where they are. And so when I have the phrase show, not tell, right? I feel like so many people tell because they're suffering from the presenter's dilemma. They're
Yeah.
assuming a base knowledge that might not be there, right? And when we show, we eliminate that risk. We tell this story, and yeah, it might take a little bit longer. The sound bite isn't we care and it's 2 words and that's it. But how do you prove that you care when something goes wrong, because we're in business and it's not if, it's when,
Right.
you know, you're my partner. How are you going to step up for me? Can I rely on you? And so when we show, right? Because I can say, yes, of course, I'm going to be there for you. But does that mean that like I'm going to offshore customer service and you're going to be on a phone tree for 6 hours when you need something desperately right this second? Or does it mean that I'm a phone call away? Right?
Right.
How do you care? And so
Yes,
these
exactly.
are this is how we show, right? Rather than tell.
Yep. So you're saying, the customer called Rachel and she answered right away and she dropped everything and came over instead of,
Yeah.
yep. We have a customer service team. Of course, everybody does.
Right.
So
All
explaining
this
what that
number.
means. Yes, exactly. 1-800 we help. Um,
Yes.
so this is fascinating. I have actually never heard that term, the presenter's dilemma, but I 100% can relate because we both work in an industry where both of those things happen, where people go way too deep when they're presenting a case study or
Mhm.
an experiment that they've done that they want to tell an audience. Maybe they assume the audience is already familiar with their discipline,
Yeah.
or they, just there's kind of no middle ground. And that's where people like us come in, is to help find that middle ground. So to anybody listening that's thinking like, oh, I wouldn't even know where to begin, that is where you bring in somebody that knows where to begin. And that's why we told Rachel's story with Laura, because Abby and I could see the bigger picture. Laura was so into it. She was, did such a beautiful job. I mean, it's like, this is like a work of art. Um, but Abby had the ability to see outside and
Yeah.
really ask the right questions. And I think that's an important piece of a success story, is making sure you're asking the right questions to tell the story, because it is a story at the end of the day.
Yes.
Um, so one thing you talked about that I think I want people to make sure they know is that you can then use this success story in other places.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be on your website. So you talked about social media, and tell us a little bit more about how do you break that up into different kind of going back to my last segment last month where we talked about reusing things. How do
Yeah.
you use this success story?
Okay. Well, I mean, social media, it's all about
Yeah,
video, right? So
exactly.
the ideal scenario is that you're actually able to record it, right? Where
Mhm.
you sit down and you do an interview with the person that's recorded. And I've done these before. They're extremely powerful. It's a bit of a process. It's a bit of an upfront expense for the business, but ooh, God, they're gold.
I
And so
know.
then you get the customer and their facial expressions and their tone of voice and their emotions, and you have somebody off camera, usually someone like myself or Lauren, and we're asking the questions, but we're not on camera, and you're just catching the sound bites and you're getting the customer to tell the story for you, right? And those are incredibly powerful, and maybe the end result is a 5-minute video, but then you chunk it up, right? You
Yeah.
put different sound bites on LinkedIn, on Instagram, whatever your platform of choice might be, and you always have the full one on your website, on your YouTube, but you have this 5-minute or 3-minute piece of collateral that you get to chunk up in different ways, repurpose. That is honestly like the best way to use it on social media. And some of those clips can also be used as pitch pieces for media. Like you can embed them into into an email that's going out to the media, because
Yeah.
that also is really powerful. And more journalists are responding to video clips being pitched to them rather than just the verbiage, right? They want that little video, especially
You
if you're
gotta stand out.
and especially if you're pitching through DMs, right? If you're on X, on Threads, on LinkedIn, and you're pitching through a DM, little video, ooh, it makes the difference between whether your pitch gets seen or not, right? That can really be an impact. And let's also scale this down. Let's say you don't have the money or the ability to really get in front of your customer. Maybe your customer is in a different state, and you just don't have the budget for a film crew,
Yeah.
right? They can, if they're willing, they can film it selfie style, right? Just again, that testimonial. If you can get a video testimonial from your customer, or sometimes what I do is I go on and I tell it for them, obviously with their permission and with their consent. But I'm like, hey guys, this great thing happened and I just wanted to share it, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
that's a great way, and I think that's an
yes,
awesome tip, because I think a lot of people would like, we, can't promote our customers, and we are going to talk about that next week
yeah,
with Laura Crowley, because there is definitely a certain element of all this that you can't talk about in certain proprietary industries. So we're going to talk about how to get
yes,
around that.
yes,
But I think that some people are probably just like nervous or hesitant to
yeah,
ask more of their clients. So having that like selfie view of like, oh my God, I just had the best client experience, that goes a long way too.
It does. And I think, look, I get that also, where I am often reluctant, like I don't want to ask too much. Like I
Exactly.
suffer from that myself, right? But in a world where people want good news,
They do.
people people want good news. And I think when you have a success story, like it lights you up, and just
Yeah,
pass that on. Like, don't keep that guilt
exactly.
to yourself. Like, okay, and this is one of the ways that I think about it. Think about how many times you went to the review section for a product, for a service, like on Amazon, on Google, on Yelp. Like, how many times in your life have you gone to a review section before making a major purchase? Or
Probably
even
every single time, right?
a stupid purchase, like
Yeah.
selfie light. I mean, it's $10, guys. Like, how
Yeah, you don't need to go too crazy.
but
Everything's returnable
right.
at Amazon, at least.
But how many times have you gone there, right? And so when you write a review, when you say, look, I used this, it was great, you're paying it forward to society. You're doing a favor to someone else. You're letting them know that you had a positive experience, or maybe like, look, I had a positive experience, but this one little thing, just so you know, be aware, it sets expectations, right? And setting
Exactly.
expectations is another really key important thing in marketing, helping you set expectations for your customer. But those reviews, it's a way to pay it forward to society at large, right?
I love that. And I think there's so many different ways that you can do it if video doesn't feel comfortable. You can do an audiogram. Another thing you could do is that we've done in the past is send out a survey, ask for a review, and then at the end of the survey say like, are you willing to talk more about this with
Yeah,
us? And
yeah,
that kind of opens you up to do more of a full article or a video. So there's so many ways you
yeah,
can tell this story. It doesn't necessarily have to be one way or the other. Certainly, video is the top
right.
priority,
But
especially in today's world.
that's a great point, though, Lauren. Like, we use surveys at Impact Botanicals. You get an email survey, and it's like, how did we do? And there's a few fields. And because those are the things that I really care about in terms of feedback. And
Exactly.
that's how we do it there, because we're just looking for the short little snippets. And if we wanted something more, you're right. Then we're working with somebody. Maybe it's a customer, maybe it's an influencer that's using a customer testimonial, and sometimes there are actors involved. Like, that's the story is real. The person might not be the original person. I mean, the ideal scenario, but we don't always have that. And there's so many ways to collect them. There really are. And
Exactly. Yeah.
people love to have their opinion validated and heard,
So
right?
true. At the end of the day, that is the truth that people do. People love to talk about something good that happened to them. So just I would tell people that remember that, when you're hesitant or you don't know how to approach a success story, remember that people like to talk about good things that happened
Right.
to their business, to them.
Yeah.
So whether you're selling a product or a service to a large corporation, know that there is not just
Yeah.
power in this success story for you, but for them too.
Yeah.
Like you said, people like to pay it forward.
Right.
Um,
And in the business to business setting, it's free marketing. It's
exactly. Think of
it's
it that way,
it's
if nothing
time,
else.
effort, energy that your marketing department is not putting forward. We're putting it forward. And
Exactly.
we're gonna promote you, right? So, because your success is our success.
Oh, I
And
love that. And that is a beautiful way to end our half hour today. Thank you so much. Any final words of inspo to our people trying to write success stories?
um if you're looking to write success stories, maybe you have internal marketing resources, maybe you don't, maybe your team is already stretched thin, maybe you want a really expert writer. And I, having worked with Lauren, uh, in healthcare, as being the subject of one of the success stories that her team wrote, um, and as doing this myself, I can absolutely direct you to some very quality talent right here.
Oh my gosh, you are too kind. You guys, I did not tell
I
her to
do
say
too.
that at all.
So that is just marketer to marketer.
Exactly. She knows what it's all about. That's the
Right.
power of a success story right there, you guys.
Exactly.
So, um, next week we're going to have Laura Crowley on, and one thing that I know people are going to give a lot of pushback is, but my industry is proprietary. I can't tell a success story. Well, that's what you think, and we have done wonders with Laura, who she's a business consultant for medical spas, ophthalmology office, plastic surgeons, everybody kind of in that world where everything is so HIPAA driven and patient driven that you really can't say, this woman came in and had laser eye surgery and can now see again, and here's her testimonial. It just doesn't work like that in healthcare. So she is going to tell us how she gets around that, because I think now that we know the power of a success story, the second piece is really like, all right, what do I do? How do I tell it if I don't have a beautiful product, or, everything in my industry has to be sealed shut. So it'll be good. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This was
It was a
amazing
joy.
and enlightening. And we're going to talk about that presenter's dilemma all the time now, because I love that. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next Friday, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.